Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Trisha, and today I am celebrating with Altenew. They have just released their latest craft a flower, and this month they have the really beautiful Buttercup. If you're not familiar with the craft a flower line, this is a subscription that Altenew offers every month, and it focuses on die cutting and paper piecing only. There are no stamps in this set. So you can see the multiple layers. There are 5 layers to create this buttercup bloom. The set also comes with a little foliage and also a thank you die cut that has the word and the shadow die. So I googled this image, or the flower, the buttercup flower, and everything I saw was yellow. Of course you could cut these out of any color you want, but I thought I would stay true to the actual buttercup this time around. And I'm going to cut this out of yellow cardstock in varying shades. So I'm just getting my dies organized here and pulling out all the pieces to sort of understand how the layers are going to work. And what you have is across the top, I have the 4 pieces of the flower that will be the petal, and then that one little tiny piece is the center, like the tops of the stamen. And then over to the left, you have 2 layers for a bud, and then a little like sprig or base where the stem would come in, and then there's 3 leaf clusters. So you could arrange this in so many ways and have lots of options. As I mentioned, I wanted to stick with the yellow, and I really wanted a soft, creamy, buttery yellow. That main die cut, the one that is solid, the furthest to the left, very little of that shows. So when you're picking out your cardstocks, keep that in mind. You're only going to get a little sliver of that. And then the packaging, it was kind of interesting. The packaging suggested that the middle layer be the lightest, and then the most detailed be the medium shade. So I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes you work like dark to light as you get more detailed. In this case, we switched up a couple of the layers. So you kind of see I'm arranging all of my die cuts, and I took them over to my machine. I just used the Big Shot and cut them out. Now that detail layer, pay attention, there's 2 little tiny pieces that are not connected, so you need to make sure you save those. So let's get started with the assembly. So my light cream die cut is the second layer, and that fits the entire outline of the shape, lines up perfectly with the solid layer, so it's super easy. And as you can see, all you see of that darkest color is just that tiny little opening, sort of that backwards 7 and those 2 other little spots. And that is the area that I'm going to focus on for alignment. Those line up perfectly with this next layer that I am inking up with some liquid glue. And you use that little backwards 7 and the 2 little openings, and that lines up perfectly. And then you can sort of zhuzh around the other pieces and make sure they line up on the edges. So it's already coming together. I've got the little separated pieces, the little accents that go on those other 2 petals. And I am just following the curve of the outside edge to line that up. But this is really forgiving. If you don't have it perfect, it won't be noticeable at all. As long as the outside edge sort of follows that curve, it doesn't matter if you're a little off. It'll just look like a little shadow at the edge of the petal, and it'll turn out great. So I like working with the liquid glue because I feel like it gives me a little time to move things around a bit. But you could certainly use a spray adhesive or a stick-it sheet, like a double-sided adhesive, before you die cut if that's easier for you. This front petal, I am curving around my paper piercer just to give it a little shape. This goes right across the front, and it's the foremost petal on the same bloom. It lines up right with the same shape on the front of the layer that we already have assembled. And I just want that to pop forward just to give it a little extra dimension. And so after rolling it around my paper piecer, I'm going to put a tiny bit of foam tape on the top edge and then the liquid glue on the bottom edge so that it's flush at the bottom and then pops out in the middle. And that really gives it some nice dimension there. And I just pinch that together with my reverse grip tweezers while it dries to make sure that liquid glue sets up nicely. Now this teensy little piece that we cut out of the dark yellow, that is the center of the flower, or the little tips of the stamen, I think. So I'm just coloring that with a gold metallic marker just to give that a little interest and catch the light. I'm just going to give that a second to dry up, and then I will adhere that in a minute to my flower. So I'm going to repeat the same process to give myself a couple of blooms to work with, and then once I have a few made, I can figure out my composition for my card front. So we'll let you watch this again. The second layer lines up just exactly with the outside edge of the first, and then for this third, more detailed layer, you can line up those openings where you see the darkest yellow cardstock. So I'm going to get that just tucked right into place. And those little top pieces can kind of bend out of the way, so just make sure that you hold them into position and they line up perfectly with the edges of your base layer. I find a tweezer to be super helpful when I am working with these, especially those teeny bits. It just helps me not get my big clumsy fingers in the way, keeps my fingers a little cleaner so that I don't end up with ink smudges, and I don't know, I just find it really helpful. So I'm just about to put my last center of the flower in, and I don't know if you noticed, but on one of the flowers, just to mix it up, I changed the order of my die cuts so that the cream was the detail layer and then that middle buttery color was the middle layer. So can you see the difference there? The right flower is reversed. And I just thought it would look like, you know, in nature, flowers come up with lighter or darker pigments, so I just thought it would look more interesting. So let's give these flowers a background. I'm using the gradient cover die, which is an older die from Altenew, and I'm cutting that from a dark gray cardstock and layering it on top of a lighter gray cardstock. And I just thought that would give something interesting going on in the background. I wasn't sure if I was going to tuck these flowers into these little slats. I don't know, I'm just playing around with their arrangement at this point, but I'm feeling like I want the three of them grouped together, and I'm thinking if I get my leaves out, that might help me figure out my composition. So I have selected 2 colors of green cardstock, and I am just going to cut lots of the leaves from both of the colors so that I have a lot to work with, and then I can figure out what I want. So I like to tape my die cuts together when I'm going to do this. So after I run this through my machine, which I'm going to go do right now, then I can just move the entire die cut arrangement over to another color like that. It's already all together for me. And then it's easy to go to the second color and die cut those. Hope that makes sense. So I'm going to leave the leaf die cuts really simple. I'm not doing any coloring or anything on those. I just thought the 2 shades of leaves would give me enough dimension and interest. I ended up flipping my gradient cover die the other direction so that the thicker dark gray was at the top, and I was covering up more of the light gray with my flowers at the bottom. And then I just kind of tuck those leaves in behind in some areas until I get a composition that I like. And I always try to work in groups of 3. You know, I've got 3 flowers, and I'm going to have 3 little sets of clusters of leaves coming out and creating a little bit of a visual triangle here so that the arrangement looks nice to my eye. So I'm liking that, and now in order to preserve that arrangement, I am using a trick that many crafters use. You know, JC, if you follow him, doesn't everybody, uses this trick all the time. Lots of people do, but it's just a piece of that press and seal wrap that we all have, or lots of us have in our kitchens. And it just grabs the flowers in exactly the arrangement, the layout that you have, and it keeps them together so that you can put your adhesive on the back or pop them up and keep them in the same composition. So first I need to put my cover die down onto my light gray cardstock. So I wasn't sure if I was going to tuck the flowers in, so I'm just doing adhesive on the outside edges for some of these. And then as I get to the top, then I run it across the whole strip. But just make sure that you leave some of those open if you want to do any tucking in. Again, back to my handy tweezers. And this just goes right to the outside edge and creates a full A2 panel. So that liquid glue gives me a little wiggle room to get that all lined up nicely. And now I have my arrangement all set because it's stuck to my press and seal wrap. And that allows me to go ahead and put some foam tape on the back because I want to pop all these guys up and get it all ready to adhere. So I'm just pulling all the release paper off my foam tape, and I can hover it over my card panel and know exactly where I want it before I press it down. And then once I gently press that into place, I can peel back my press and seal, and it's ready to go. Now a few of these leaves I didn't put any foam tape behind, so I can just tuck a little bit of liquid glue if I feel like they are they're loose and might snag, because I just don't want them to snag coming in and out of an envelope. So I love this arrangement, but just to soften all those hard lines, like how linear the background is, I thought a little bit of ink splatter would add a little bit of a more organic feel to things. Plus, I just finally got this white ink spray, and I think I'm just using it on everything because it's so fun and it always adds a nice little touch. Originally, I covered up my florals because I didn't want them to get completely doused with ink, but then I kind of rethought it, and I wanted a little bit of sprinkle on them as well. So I went ahead and added one more little shot of ink on the flowers too. So after cleaning up my workspace, I got to thinking about my sentiment. And since I was really trying to keep this as an ink-free card, which is so unusual for me, I wanted a die-cut sentiment. I pulled out this old fancy Hello die from Altenew, which is such a tried and true. I use this all the time. And I didn't want this to be too bold. I just wanted, I wanted this to be visible, but not so distracting from those beautiful flowers. So I kept it white as opposed to black, or any other color, I should say. And I am stacking it up with 3 layers of the same die cut just to give it some bulk and make it a little sturdier because I'm going to be adhering this to this really uneven surface. I'm going to liquid glue this onto my flowers, which are all lots of layers. I thought the little flourish at the end of my O was too much for the card, and it was kind of hanging off the edge, so I just chopped that off and gave it a little angled edge and adhered that right on top of my flowers. Again, since I said I was adhering this to an uneven surface, I really put that heavy block on there and gave it a minute to dry. Teeny little bit of that lighter gray cardstock peeking out behind my cover die, so I just trimmed that with a long scissors, and then I think that is it. My card is good to go. All I need to do is put this on an A2 card base, which I use 110-pound Neenah Solar White for my card bases, so they're nice and sturdy, especially when you've got heavy die cuts on the front. So that will be it for my card today. When you've got this beautiful Craft a Flower Buttercup, you can keep everything else kind of nice and simple and get gorgeous results. I had so much fun playing around with this new Buttercup layering die set. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe button so we can meet back here for my next video. Also, make sure you are checking out all the other stops on the hop. You can find the complete list of designers and lots more information over at my blog. You can also find a list with links to supplies in the description box below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.